Hello and welcome to Own Your Health with me, Katie Brindle. Now, this is the Q&A, which is one of my favourite bits of the podcast because in these episodes we answer your questions, which is why you always hear me say, do put your questions in the comments below if you're on any of the social media. And of course, please, if you are on Spotify or Apple, please do forward and send this on to your friends because this is free content and we want to get the word out there as much as we can. So if you do have any questions and you're not on the social platforms, then please do send in to ownyourhealth@katiebrindle.com and we will answer your questions in these sessions. So what are we doing in today's episode? Well, today we are talking about poor circulation, especially within cold weather. And we're also going to be talking about some gua sha techniques, which is using crystals such as this, and why you want to have those in your toolkit for self-care. So this episode is brought to you by a superb brand, which I'm so excited to talk to you about. Now, remember, all of the brands that we talk about in the advertising space in Own Your Health are always brands that I want you to know about because I think they're good. And Liminal is no exception to this. Now, Liminal is founded by a friend of mine and a friend of the podcast, Rebecca Brown. Now, Rebecca Brown started life as a narrative researcher. And you're thinking, what on earth is that? And the clue is interesting into the creation of Liminal that came out of the back of it. So she spent her entire professional career before this listening to people's stories. And she started to work into the menopause time before the menopause sort of became the huge great topic that it is now. So consequently, she was building up this huge great research bank of other people's stories, which then coincided with her own journey going into the perimenopause, where slightly her professional world started to fall apart due to the perimenopausal symptoms. Now, as a result of her own personal story and also being a narrative researcher, she started to experiment, as we all do. She started to ask herself, what if I ... So she started to formulate all sorts of different formulations using all sorts of different herbal decoctions in order to create the brand that is now called Liminal. And the answer to this is that she's created not just a superb range of powders and supplements, which are very complex powders with multi ingredients all combined into them, apparently extraordinarily difficult to formulate. But in this community, there is also very much a community-based energy frequency of the sharing of knowledge, the sharing of stories, the sharing of understanding that when you're going through your menopausal symptoms, not only do you need physical and biological support, but you also need emotional and spiritual support as well. Now, this is something that is key to the heart of the Liminal brand. So over there is the most amazing community of men and women who are discussing all sorts of treatment modalities which have worked for them or their partners. So Liminal is a brand that I would very much encourage you to pop over to the website. So that is our wonderful sponsor and friend of the podcast today. And now we shall go back into the rest of the podcast. Now, before we get started onto that, we've got some really lovely feedback from everyone so far. Cal, you say, I've put my first order in. Evolve sounds just what I need for my minnow skin. So thank you for the discount code. For any of those interested, there is a brilliant discount code with Evolve with us at the moment. And I absolutely have to say that those Evolve products work brilliantly well with the AU tools. I've been using a number of them now for quite a while, and I am just in love with that brand. That's one of the reasons why we're having such a close relationship with them, because I want you to know about it. So if you're new to this Evolve revolution, then do please listen to the episode where I talk to the fantastic founder and we understand why it's such a brilliant brand. Then Sandra and Molly says, so much information in short bites. I'm addicted. Thank you, Katie. Just love the podcast. Well, honestly, Sandra and Molly, that is what we love to hear. That makes us all smile here back at the studio. And then Lena, she says, this is so interesting. I had no idea that I could do something about the sides of the mouth. So, main topic of today. We've got a couple of really good questions which have come in. And the first one is from Louise. And Louise says that her son is 16 and he suffers from poor circulation in cold weather. Now, this is quite often after football matches. His fingers are white, right down to his knuckles. There's no pain. They then return to normal shortly afterwards. What would I do to suggest to help? Now, the other thing that she also mentioned is that in the family, there is a history of lupus and connective tissue disease, which he's been tested for, and he's got the all clear. But nonetheless, that's actually relevant to me. So I wanted to kind of include that as well. So what's this all about? Well, the thing about poor circulation. Now, in Chinese medicine, poor circulation is very much something that is connected to the primary aspect of care. Anybody that's been listening avidly or binge listening to my podcast is going to know what I'm about to say. But if you're new, you're going to hear this again many times in this podcast. There are 3 things you need to know about looking after yourself, and everything always boils down to either one or all of these 3 things. So I'm going to recap them again. The first thing, which is what this relates to, is the free flow of circulation around your body. And circulation is blood, which you're familiar with, but also chi, or energy. Okay, and if that's not flowing smoothly around the body, if that's getting encumbered in any shape or form, you're going to start to get symptoms. And poor circulation is literally relevant to that. Now, the next thing that happens is that you need to make sure that the body is purging and nourishing, by which I mean it's like a processing plant, okay? Cellular waste needs to go out and new fresh inputs need to come in. And if the things aren't circulating correctly, then what happens is that starts to sort of bung up and clog up and congest up, and therefore you start to get more symptoms. And then the final layer, which people don't really seem to know about, is that what you have to do is strengthen and balance the 5 key organs. So in today's episode, we're very excited to be partnering with Nature's Answer. Now, Nature's Answer is a brilliant wellness brand, which I'm very excited to talk about because they have hundreds and hundreds of formulations, and they don't just offer them as capsules. Now, I find not everybody likes taking powder-based, capsule-based supplements. Some people can't cope with them. Some people are already taking quite a number of them. So I always think it's quite useful to take supplements in different shapes and guises because it helps you sort of cross-reference against different things, because many of us wish to take various different things for various different reasons. So Nature's Answer, they use gummies, they use droppers, they use all the different variations of how to get these supplements into your body. So I find that very useful. And they also, clues in the name, pretty much have the answer to pretty much everything. But today I want to talk particularly about a particularly sorry, I'm going to say that again. I've said that twice. But today I want to talk about a particular supplement that they offer, which is called UT Answer. UT standing for urinary tract. Now, urinary tract infections are one of the major causes of misery, and it comes in my clinic a lot. And often people refer to antibiotics as a solution. That's absolutely fine, but many people then struggle with the solution because they have to find themselves taking repeated antibiotics because the problem never quite goes away. What Nature's Answer are using here is a very interesting 3-day regimen to help clear up urinary tract infections. Now, this can be a particularly useful thing if it's a recurring problem, which often happens when you're hitting perimenopause and the menopause stages in life. So what they're using is a various different extract combination using concentrated cranberry with D-mannose and vitamin C, and it's very fast acting as a result. Now, that is a really useful product for anyone to have on their bathroom shelf, because often you will find that these urinary tract infections kind of come in and hit us at random moments in time, and they are extraordinarily painful. So you want to have something fast acting to ensure that we can sort them out. So if you're interested in any of these brilliant supplements, or specifically the UT Answer, then do please pop over to John Bell and Croydon, Whole Foods or bodykind.com and find out all about how their products can help you. And now back to the podcast. Now, according to Chinese medicine, those 5 key organs are the heart, the spleen, the lungs, the kidneys and the liver. There are other organs as well, but those are the 5 key ones that we need to make sure that we are focusing on. Now, those 3 things, free flow of circulation, ensuring that the body is releasing what needs to come out and ingesting what needs to come in, and that the 5 key organs are all operating smoothly and harmoniously, you're going to own your health. But if those things are not happening, you're going to get symptoms. And poor circulation sits very much at the beginning of that journey. So basically, the circulation is not flowing smoothly around the body. Now, the reason why is because I expect the clue here is that this is happening after a football match. What Louise is not saying is that he's getting this all the time. He's getting this after he's been doing athletics. Now, what that is going to tell me to diagnose here is that there is not enough energy and blood flowing around this body. So she says, grabbing this candle. So imagine that the body needs to have this candle all the way up to the top in order to be full of energy and blood. Okay, but the problem is, if you're deficient, now that could be because there's lupus and connective tissue disease running in the family, and although her son has been tested negative for that, it could be that there's a predisposition of energetic weakness, which is just sort of sitting underneath the under the radar. because it's energy, and therefore the blood test and that diagnosis wouldn't pick that up. So what that means is there's just a little bit of deficiency going on there. So what happens is, instead of it being full to the brim, there's a compromise. Now, what the body then does when there's a compromise is it's going to have to basically use what you've got available in order to manage itself. So therefore, the circulation isn't full to the brim. The circulation can't quite get all the way around the body. Now, what the body will then do is, it's a bit like a government in COVID. It's just got to make some really difficult decisions. So just like the government went, right, we've got to axe everything and just focus on the NHS. Okay, now that's not great, but it's what we had to do. Now, the body's doing the same thing here. It's basically the circulation is compromised. So what the body's doing is like, well, we've got to keep the circulation in the organs, especially when this person is running around and kicking a ball outside. And it's likely to be cold because football tends to be a match that's played kind of in the colder months, okay? So you've got cold coming in as well. So what the body will do is it will keep what it needs around the organs, because as I've said, level 3 is the organs need to flow, the energy needs to flow, they need to be balanced, and they need to be strong. So if all the blood's at the extremities of the body, the organs get compromised, and then you're going to have a major problem. Okay, so what the body will do is reverse that. It will draw the energy and blood into itself to keep the organs strong and therefore make the compromise at the extremities of the body. Now, the reason why is because ultimately the energy I expect in this case is ever so slightly deficient. That could be due to lifestyle. It could be due to the fact that there's a little bit of weak energy coming in through the parents and through the grandparents. And therefore, when you're then running around, that weakness is getting exacerbated. The body, in turn, draws it inwards. Energy commands blood. Blood mothers energy. So there's a relationship between these two things. So as the energy comes in, the blood comes in, which means the extremities aren't nourished. They go white because the energy is pulling the blood inwards because it commands the blood, and therefore the blood flow is not happening. Now, because her son is relatively young, he's only 16, this seems to rectify itself pretty quickly. So she's saying it kind of comes back fairly quickly after he's been running around playing football. Now, as we get older, what we tend to find is that people with circulatory disorders, it takes longer and longer and longer for it to rectify itself. And it can often become very painful. You can have burning sensations, pins and needles sensations, you can have weakness. There's all sorts of symptoms that go with it. But ultimately, that's what's going on, is that when you have circulatory disorders and the body inevitably pulls the circulation from the extremities up into the torso because it's got a compromised amount that it's working with, and therefore in turn has to make compromises. So the question is, what do I do? Well, the quick fixes are when you've got a circulatory disorder, it's often quite painful when the circulation comes back again. Think of pins and needles. So the first thing I would use the soft brush. Now, because it normally affects the fingers and toes, I would use the face brush. Okay, and the first thing that I would be doing is just brushing my skin with the brush because it's really, really soft. It won't overly stimulate the area. So if I start using, say, even the mini tapper, that might be too vigorous. Okay, it might start actually hurting. So what you want to do is use the brush to first of all brush, and then when it starts to feel comfortable, patting. Now, all of our tools have got names like drummers, tappers. This one's called the brush because I couldn't call it a patter because everyone would go, Katie, that's a brush. So I called it the brush because it is. But with a brush, you can pat. And patting is a really, really good way of restoring energy back into the extremities, okay, in a very gentle way. So you brush first, pat second. So that's the kind of way to get the energy stimulated. But the thing is, what we've also got to think about is the fact that what's sitting underneath this is the fact that there's a compromise in the first place. We've got to get the energy and the blood nourished in the body. So how do we do that? Well, the easiest way is through the breath. And one of the other reasons I suspect this is happening in football is because you're running around and yes, you're breathing a lot because you're exercising, but you're compromising the body at the same time. So the best way to get the breath into the body is when you're in a relaxed state, rather than doing conscious breathing techniques when you're running around and compromising the body. You need to allow the body to go into a very relaxed state so that the breath can come in, okay, and restore. So really for that, you need to be doing Qigong or yoga or meditation practices, or if nothing else, just sitting in a chair like this and just following my very, very gentle 4-part breath, which is super easy. So let's do it now. So you just breathe gently in, linger at the top of the breath, breathe gently out, linger at the bottom of the breath. Now that is a very easy way to get nourishment from the breath into the body, which in turn strengthens up the energy, which in turn strengthens up the blood. Okay, now the key thing to that is because it's so simple and it's free, we forget to do it because we're quite conditioned to buying things and eating for energy and that kind of thing. So, or going to the gym to exercise. So this is where I would suggest you use a app on your phone. The one that I like is Mindfulness Bell. We can put the link in the comments below. They have a bell which is free, or you can pay £2 and you can have one of the many bells that they offer. And you can have that chiming every 15 minutes on your phone. And all that does is it just cuts into whatever it is that you're doing to remind you to do that breath. And if you do that every 15 minutes, I mean, you can set it every hour if you wish, or every few hours. So you can sort of do what you like. But basically, if you did it every 15 minutes, you will in turn start to restore the chi and the blood into the body and strengthen the blood back up. The other thing that I would also do is directly work via the food as well. Now, bearing in mind her son's 16, so there's a lot of blood nourishing foods that we can recommend. The best source of finding them is on my liver fact sheet, which is free, and I list all of the blood nourishing foods right there. But a quick one is actually jelly. And given that her son's 16, that's probably she says slightly imagining that he probably quite likes sugar. But jelly actually is a really good way of getting a blood nourishing supplement into the body quickly and pleasurably, and the chances are they'll stick to taking it. So the best way is to just buy old-fashioned jelly cubes and just have 2 cubes a day. It's actually an old remedy for broken brittle nails. I would also suggest that you use the tapper. So when you're not having a bad circulation issue, she says, sorry, my tap is on the floor. So this is the body tapper. Now, this is really good for strengthening blood and energy throughout the body. So what you do is you just tap all over the body using this tapper. It's got a nice long handle so you can reach the back. Make sure you're tapping the spine and make sure you're tapping the long bones, such as here down the arms and down the legs, because what you're doing there is you're invigorating and rectifying blood circulation, but you're also working into the stem cells which get produced deep into the bone marrow of these long bones. And when you tap, do that slow breath, because then you're tapping and getting the energy rectifying and balancing around the body. So that's what I would suggest you do for that one. Hopefully that all makes sense. And let me just go back here I've got another laptop on the go here, so I'm going into my other notes. So the next one is Ellie. Ellie, hey Katie, I've just brought a couple of gua sha tools from your website. I'm so excited to start using them. Do you have any top tips for what to do with them as we're coming into autumn? Well, yes. So for those of you that don't know, I kind of sort of came into many people's lives in lockdown, because I launched this crystal, this one, which is the Jade Gua Sha, which at the time no one knew what it was and no one knew how it worked, and everyone was like, well, who are you and what's that? But then over the years, people started to sort of get the hang of gua sha, and it's become a massive trend. So in turn, we launched these other 2. So there's now 3 in the range, which is the Jade, the rose quartz and the clear quartz. Okay, so these are the 3 that we have in the Hey You method. I'd like to talk to you about our 2 wonderful sponsors, because we don't take on anybody, we're very picky here. So the first sponsor is the Naked Pharmacy. Now, the reason we love working with them so much is because on this podcast, we cover a wide range of health advice. I mean, from any given week, I'm going to be talking to you for anything from shingles to sinusitis to eating chia seed rye bread in order to get good bowel movements in autumn, to decluttering, to a myriad of different things. And you need a partner that can kind of run with you at the same time. And the Naked Pharmacy is just that, because they have supplements for everything, which means whatever topic we're talking about, you can pop over to the Naked Pharmacy and they will have supplements to support this information. Now, not only that, they are very content rich. They have an actual pharmacy, which is what's so great. So just as we as a brand here on Own Your Health are very keen to answer all your questions and to keep the dialogue going with you, to offer the advice as much as just products themselves, the Naked Pharmacy are the same. So they have the products to match the content, but they also have the expertise as well. Now, they cover anything from stress to sleep to mood to energy to gut health to weight management, and pretty much everything else besides. So they're also going to give you the support as well. And they're offering us a 20% discount. If you use KT20 at checkout, which is at thenakedpharmacy.com, and you pop in KT20 at checkout, you will get a 20% discount. So we're really picky about who we partner with, because I want to make sure that when I'm partnering and promoting something here to you, my audience, that I endorse it wholeheartedly, and I genuinely think it's in your interest to know about it. So let's talk about Meda. Now, Meda Skincare was set up in 2009 by Dr. Tina Meda. And the reason I love this brand so much is because it's really very much focused on finding holistic and natural solutions to your skincare. And she has a few really cool, iconic products. The first one, which is the one that she started with, which is this probiotic exfoliating Enzy peel mask. What it does is it works in conjunction with the microbiome on your skin. Now, this is really important because most of my audience is sort of 40 plus. So anyone that's 40 plus is likely to have put chemicals on their skin over the years, because that was the skincare that we were sort of introduced to in the bad old days of the 20th century. Now, that's not great, because when you strip the microbiome off your skin, what happens is then that gets replaced by a whole load of chemicals. And that's not great, because basically everything's stripped off and chemical dependent. So what happens with this Enzy peel mask is that it basically supports the health and diversity of your skin's beneficial bacteria. Now, this is important because I'm talking to you about this in the autumn. And autumn is very much a time of the metal element, which is to do with your lungs and your large intestine and the immune system. And microbiome, which sits on the surface of the skin and is not to be stripped off, has a direct relationship with the lungs, because the skin is the second lung. And the lungs, in turn, have the secondary organ of the large intestine, which is where vast quantities of this microbiome are hosted within the body. And this is all the good bacteria. This is all the good stuff. So we really don't want to be stripping this stuff out. So Meda has a brilliant quiz which will help you establish exactly what it is that you need to be adding to your skincare routine. But the hero product that she launched with back in 2009, which sort of got her into the public space, is very much this Enzy peel mask, which is probably the thing that I use the most, and I really, really enjoy using, and you can really feel it sort of working into the skin. So a brilliant, brilliant brand. I really, really endorse this brand. I think it works very much as regular skincare, but also treatment skincare as well. And I'm all in favour of regulating the biome back into your skin if you've been using chemicals. But let me go to the Jade one, because this is the one that sort of people sort of know me for. Now, Jade as a tool is fantastic for the body and for your beauty. Jade is considered Earth's gift to mankind. Now, using gua sha in autumn and using jade particularly is really good, because autumn is very much a transitionary season where we're coming out of summer and transitioning into winter, and everything is going back into the earth. Okay, everything is falling off its exterior manifestation as everything's out on the trees in the summertime, and it's all coming inwards. The leaves are falling down, everything's kind of weeping into the soil. The soil is picking up the nutrients of all those leftovers, and it's then going to go still when we go into deep winter, until it suddenly bursts into life again in the spring season. So we're very much connected to earth right now. Things are grounding back down. Things are connecting back into earth. So working with a crystal, which is earth's gift to mankind, which is the jade itself, is a very good idea, especially when you're using jade for your skin and for your face. So Earth's gift to mankind, what does that mean? Well, the thing about jade is it's a kind of adaptogenic crystal. Okay, so an adaptogen is something which just kind of like recognizes what needs to be done and adapts itself to do so. You get this a lot in herbal medicine. You'll get certain herbs which can kind of warm what's cold and cool what's warm. It's amazing. You sit there and go, how on earth is that possible? And yet it is. Our bodies do it too. Okay, our bodies are adaptogenic. They metabolize in accordance to what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it. Jade is no exception to this, even though it's a solid structure. So what jade will do is indeed warm up what is cool and cool down what is warm, and it will transform itself according to what's happening to it. So for example, when I pick jade up, it's cool to the touch, which means if I'm flushed or hot, or I'm coming out of a cold environment outside, going into a warm environment on the inside, and that's affecting my skin, the first thing I can do is hold the jade. Not even use it for gua sha, just hold, because it's a very, very high quality crystal. I can hold that against my skin. So if I'm having a hot flush, or I'm getting a slight headache, okay, or my eyes are feeling a bit flushed and hot, or I'm getting a bit of a sort of frown here and I'm thinking, oh God, it's still getting a bit much, I can just hold this crystal over the affected areas. And it's immediately going to start soothing and comforting. Now, the next thing that it's going to do is it will then start to warm up, because I've placed it over something warm, i.e. my skin. Now, then what happens is it starts to warm up. Now, when it warms up, this amazing thing happens where Jade starts to emit far infrared rays into your skin. Okay, so then it becomes a healing tool. Okay, so then what happens is, because it's good quality, the far infrared rays, this side's now warm, so I'm now emitting far infrared rays into my skin. So I can sit there patiently watching Netflix, just holding this against my skin. But then what's happening is this side is cooling down because the heat is kind of working on this side, but this side is emitting heat out this way. So therefore the crystal's cooling back down again on the other side. So all I have to do is simply turn it round, and then I'm doing a bit of both. Now, hot cold is very, very good for the body on the outside. This is where all the hot cold bathing sort of ideas have come in from, because basically when you start to fluctuate temperatures, you can do all sorts of clever things with the body. Now, you don't want to overly fluctuate temperatures on your skin, on your face, because that can actually create all sorts of issues. But with this, it's very gentle. So it feels very, very pleasurable and very sensitive. Okay, it's very kind of sensual, so it's a very sensual, pleasurable experience. So before you even do anything else with your tool, just holding it and turning it over is a brilliant thing to do. Now, the next thing that happens is, as we're in the autumn season, often we find this transition of light to dark, hot to cold, shorter nights, staring at screens, electric lights, putting the lights on in the morning as the mornings are starting to get darker, putting the lights on more in the evening can start to make our eyes feel a bit sore and can also bring on headaches. So again, this crystal is really useful because you can use the pressure points to work on key pressure points of the body, such as this one, which is fantastic if your eyes are starting to get a bit sensitive and you're starting to feel a bit kind of headachy. This is a really good stress pressure point, which you can use here. And then, because of the shape of the crystal, you can place it over the eyes and just gently massage it over the eyes like this, which can sort of offset the kind of the endless assault of electricity and kind of bright lights focusing on you. The other thing that often happens at this time of year is we start to kind of eat more hearty food. And so therefore what can often happen is we start to get aches and pains in our jaw because we're kind of chewing more, because we're kind of coming into kind of the autumn fare. So the other thing that I love about this tool is you can place it over the exterior of the jaw just here, and you can really massage into this jaw area, into the mandible. Okay, and this is really, really good for just kind of helping to promote sleep. If you're crunching and chewing your jaw, if you're crunching your teeth and grinding your teeth at night, or if you're getting jaw pains, which are very, very common, especially in this time of year when the temperatures start to change, you can really use this as a massage technique to work. And another brilliant massage technique with these crystals is working on the side of the nose like this. These areas here are really affected by the change of temperatures. You often find, especially if you've got kids, that round one of colds has already been and gone. Okay, I've got kids at school and they went back late August, early September. Immediately within, I'm not joking, 1 week, okay, they start to come home, sniffles, tired, colds are already starting to go around because they've all come back into an enclosed space. So, and then you kind of get blocked up nose and sinusitis and things like that. So just rubbing the crystal is really, really good just on this these pressure points right here. Really, really good for working with colds and sinusitis. Then, and finally, you can then get to the gua sha techniques that this crystal offers you. Now, from a health perspective, the first one that I would be doing, now I've got nice clothes on, so I'm not going to actually demonstrate this fully, but you would put a bit of the oil on, which is the Hey You Beauty oil, and you just put a little bit down the sides of the neck like this and the back of the neck. And then the next thing you want to do with the tool is you use the rounded edge, and then you want to start with your earlobe as the reference point, and you go down the throat like this. You don't rub up and down, you go downwards. Now, what are we doing here? We're clearing the front line of defenses of the body, the tonsils, right here at the back of the throat. Now, they're the front line defenses of your immunity, because you're breathing in about 35,000 times a day on average. Okay, which means any kind of airborne diseases are coming into the body thick and fast, and they're coming in here. And if you don't keep this clear to allow this, if it's starting to get congested, to go into the lower lymph glands, which are here, which means then in turn you can move them out through the body and give your body's immune system a really good shot at keeping this under control. You don't want things congesting at the back of the throat. This is where you feel the cold when it comes in. It's that tickle, that sensation. You want to keep that released. And you want to do that every day, because you're going to be breathing in airborne diseases every single day. It's just in the summertime, the temperature in the outside world just kind of keeps the immune system in a slightly different condition, which makes it less likely for you to get sick. You do still get summer colds, it's still a thing, but you tend to get them more at this time of year going into winter. So you want to do about 6 sweeps from this point, from this point and then down the back of the throat. And that's just keeping all of the lymph free and the congestion moving. And then in turn, it's moving into the lower lymph glands, which you can then address using the body tapping technique, which I've just shown you, because it's really good for that too. And then you just use your normal gua sha techniques, which is what I teach you, using the double end going along the chin, using this sweeping across the face and going across. So you're going up like that and down, and then up like this and down. And not only is that giving you a brilliant beauty technique, which is kind of why this went into huge, great trending. This really trended in lockdown, okay, and it's still going strong. But why? Because they call it the Asian facelift, because it's amazing and it works and it does, okay. But it's also really, really good for autumn health. So there we go. That is a couple of really interesting questions that have come in. So we've talked about circulation. And we've also talked about why face gua sha is such a useful technique to do for autumn weather. It's a good technique to do all year round, but specifically we're in autumn right now. So therefore it's so useful. So please, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review. I'd be so grateful if you did. Do please leave your comments and your questions in the social media platforms that you're on. And please send this to your friends and family and loved ones if you found this relevant. So thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to seeing you next time.